Jacob Wolf reported today that PowerOfEvil has declined his player option with FlyQuest and is going to become a free agent for 2021. And that is a move with a lot of potential repercussions for the entire LCS offseason. So I want to break it down a little bit. I want to start by looking at some motivations for why PowerOfEvil may have made this choice, and then look at what that might mean for the rest of the offseason and the rest of the league and the way the LCS is going to shape up. So first of all, I see two potential big motivations for why PowerOfEvil would make this choice. One is financial. There are a bunch of other dominoes that have fallen that I think may have led to this. One is the massive deal Jensen signed with Team Liquid, the 3-year contract worth somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.3, $1.4 million a year, I believe is the number. And that's something that really shows the value of a star mid laner and sets a very clear number that PowerOfEvil can use to negotiate a contract. So many salaries are not revealed or become public in League of Legends contracts right now. So when one does, it really helps a player and their agent, if they have one, to have comparables and say, look, this player is earning this much. I think, I'm roughly equivalent or a little bit below or a little bit above this player. So here's a point that we can really firmly negotiate around. Another domino that fell was Bjergsen retiring. And the implications of that is that a player like PowerOfEvil, who's been in the mix as kind of a top 3, top 4 mid laner in the region, suddenly gets moved up a notch and becomes that much more valuable. When you can say, I'm not the third best mid laner in the LCS, I'm the second best mid laner in the LCS, that is really a huge bargaining chip that you can use that increases PowerOfEvil's value relative to the rest of the league. It becomes that much harder for other teams to compete with you because they don't have a Bjergsen in their back pocket. So those two pieces, combined with PowerOfEvil's personal performance over the past couple of years, and especially this year, really make a big difference. PowerOfEvil can now go into a negotiation and say, look, I was the third all-pro mid laner, both spring and summer split. I went to the finals, both splits. I went to Worlds. And I'm also a top 2 potentially. Maybe you could argue third best mid laner in NA, given the current players there, him and Nisqy, different styles. Most people would probably put PowerOfEvil above Nisqy, given what we've seen from them both this year. My personal opinion on that is maybe a little more nuanced, but you can definitely present that in a negotiation with a team. So all of this combines to make PowerOfEvil's value in a negotiation and for a new contract really skyrocket. And I'm quite sure that he's aware of that. Whether he's got an agent kind of figuring that out with him or not, he's aware of that his value has increased, and that gives him really good motivation to say, no, I'm going to opt out of the current deal I have, even if it's a pretty good deal, even if it's worth $600,000, $700,000 a year. He thinks, I can get somewhere up in that Jensen range. Maybe I can't get quite the same number, but a $900,000, maybe even stretching into $1 million deal, and that gives him financial motivation to either try to renegotiate with FlyQuest on a new contract or look at a different team. The other really big motivation I think PowerOfEvil can be looking at is a competitive, and he just wants to win, right? He wants to not reach finals, he wants to win them, he wants to earn titles, he wants to get out of groups at Worlds, these kinds of things. And the really big piece here that we can look at is the fact that Santorin, who is set to become a free agent anyways, it was revealed a couple days ago that he is now able, FlyQuest has given him permission to start talking to other teams and negotiating ahead of the official open of free agency. And that's a sign that there may be more happening behind the scenes. If Santorin is leaving the team, maybe FlyQuest, the hope was, from a FlyQuest fan perspective and from, I'm sure, the organization's perspective, retain Santorin, run with the same starting 5, and continue to build on the success we already have. If Santorin moves on, and maybe there are some other things that are going to happen, maybe the options PowerOfEvil is seeing or hearing about for replacing them at the jungle, maybe he feels like, this is going to be a step back competitively, and I want to win a title. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do it here at FlyQuest. And so therefore he would opt out and say, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to say I'm a big piece to build around. One of these other orgs, bring me in, and we will go win a championship together. So when you put together the financial motivations, the competitive motivations, it's a little speculation on both, of course. I lean more towards the financial side of the argument. I think that's probably the bigger piece of why PowerOfEvil is doing this, but I think there are definitely some signs that he may be looking on the competitive side and saying, no, I want to win a title, and I no longer think FlyQuest is the place for me. So the implications of this are pretty big on the overall offseason. PowerOfEvil being added to the pool of available mid laners does open up the options there pretty considerably for a lot of the teams that are out there. And we know that there are definitely quite a few teams looking for a really solid, strong mid laner that they can kind of anchor a roster around. this affects the availability, or the potential availability at least, of Nisqy from Cloud9, and it reduces Cloud9's bargaining power, because now a team that might have been looking at Nisqy and saying, hey, we're going to pay the buyout and bring that contract in, they can say, or we could just negotiate with PowerOfEvil instead. That's not going to cost us a buyout, and maybe we think PowerOfEvil is even a better player, or at least a better stylistic fit for what we're trying to build. So I think this hurts Cloud9, unless they, for some crazy swap reason, decide they want to bring PowerOfEvil in themselves, then it's that gets really complicated. But from a simpler perspective, I think this hurts Cloud9. It hurts their bargaining power with Nisqy. Maybe makes them a little more likely to retain him, because they don't think, if they decide they're not going to be able to sell him, but there are other dynamics at play in Cloud9, of course, on whether they're going to bring Nisqy back in or promote PowerOfEvil or whatever they're going to do there. I also think this has pretty big implications for FlyQuest themselves. If they aren't able to meet the number PowerOfEvil wants to come back, assuming that he's going to ask for a higher salary than he was earning before, because he's definitely not opting out and asking for a lower one. He's not going to accept that. Maybe FlyQuest then decide, if we're not able to bring back Centauran, if we're not able to bring back PowerOfEvil, maybe it's time to take a larger step backward, just accept that this is the trajectory we've been forced on. Maybe we start to rebuild a little bit. We create a new team identity, we take a few more risks, maybe we bring in some more youth and develop a little bit longer, and go into a bit more of a slow growth curve. If that happens, maybe Ignar becomes available. Maybe you can make some good money on selling his contract. Maybe even Wild Turtle becomes available, right? Some of these other things could have implications for what else FlyQuest do. Maybe some of those players have player options and they decide to opt out as well. I don't actually know what kind of contracts they're sitting on, and typically we don't get to know those details. So there could be a lot of other effects. I think this affects other teams. It affects FlyQuest themselves a lot, and it could have a lot more. We've seen some dominoes that fall that led to this point, and I think it could definitely cause some further dominoes to fall, both within FlyQuest and some other teams. As a quick note on some potential landing spots that I see for PowerOfEvil, of course, there is the chance he comes back to FlyQuest. I'm not super sold on that being a chance, because I think they will have to pay a premium to bring him back and increase his compensation quite a bit. I'm not really sure that's the position they're in. I think TSM is an option, and a lot of people are talking about that already, partly because TSM fans would just love to have him and have a really good mid laner to kind of pick up where Bjergsen left off. I think Evil Geniuses have the ability to compensate him the way they want. So it depends what else they're planning to do with the rest of their roster there, and whether they think he would fit into it. I think the stylistic fit and not knowing what they're going to do elsewhere is going to be the main question. I also think it's really interesting to look at, could he fit into 100 Thieves? Because the thing that I've talked about for a couple of years now is they need a really strong mid laner to pair with Someday to relieve pressure from him. Because if you have, a frequently losing mid lane, even if they're kind of a good kind of scaling teamfight player or something like that, you reduce the ability of Someday to bully his lane and kind of play through that top side. You need to have a strong lane-winning type mid laner, I think, to enable a lot more of Someday and allow that team to be successful given what they have in their top lane. So that could be an interesting fit as well. There might be some other landing spots. I don't know exactly where he's going to end up, but I think it's going to be really interesting to find out and to see what else happens in the LCS offseason as a result of this move. So I'll be following along with all those things just as you are, reacting to them, sharing my takes. So make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see those as they come out and get notified when we've got more news to react to.